Awesome. So that's all happening now. So I can just share you that link afterwards.
Great, thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we will jump into it. So thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you guys about Tangaroa Blue and the work that we're doing, and possibly find ways that we can connect. Obviously for us, this issue is kind of all-consuming, and we work a lot with the same type of stakeholder groups, and it's always really exciting to find different groups, different audiences for the work and the message, because everybody can translate that into you know, a different way to express messaging, and this is another opportunity for that. I don't know if you've seen some of the social media posts that have been happening over the last few months, but we've been working with the community up in the Torres Strait Islands, who have taken a lot of our ghost net and bits of rope that we've collected from Cape York, and they're making all this artwork out of it. And they even created these little artwork kits, and people ordered them, and then they walked them through how to do some artwork online, which was amazing. And so, you know, art is another way to talk about this issue and connect with audiences. So I hope that you enjoy what I'm going to present, and please make it interactive so that I don't have to, it's not just me talking, ask questions. And I've kind of left it a little bit fluid, because I'd really like to, it looks like Brad is going to be able to join us. He's just coming in. I've left it a little bit fluid because I'd like you guys to talk about what you're interested to, and we have so much resources and information that we can kind of move sideways. I'll just wait for Brad to log in. Oh, Brad, are you there? It looks like he's online. Can you hear me, Brad? I can see him there, definitely. Yeah. So is everybody familiar with Zoom? Most people are these days, but everybody knows all the features and the chat functions and stuff like that? Yep, yeah. Cool. Awesome. All right, well, I'll get going. I'm just going to share my screen. Awesome. Okay, so can you guys see that okay?
Yep. Yeah.
Excellent. Alrighty, so as a bit of an introduction, so Tangaroa Blue is a not-for-profit organisation, and we're a registered charity in Australia, and we started back in 2004. Tangaroa, everyone asks me what does it mean, and it's actually the Polynesian and the Maori god of the ocean. And one of Tangaroa's laws are, if you look after me, I look after you. And that's a really important concept that, you know, a lot of our volunteers and our partners really connect with, because they either work on the ocean or in the ocean or in tourism, or they love to surf or they fish. And this is a way that we can give back. And we started as a really small community group in the very southwest corner of Western Australia, really concerned about the marine debris that was washing up within a national park up there. And we started recording what we were finding, and it was a real surprise at the different sources of the debris that we were finding. You know, there was beer bottles and cigarette butts that were left as litter, but then we also had a lot of offshore stuff coming through. There was, you know, water bottles with international writing on them. There was lots of different types of commercial fishing gear. And it became really clear that, you know, each of those items was there because of a particular reason. And if all we did was clean it up, then we would just have this never-ending job of cleaning up all the time. So we wanted to collect data to try and figure out exactly where it was coming from and what actually needed to change to stop it from entering the environment in the first place. And since then, the project has really expanded nationally, and we've pulled it together underneath a header called the Australian Marine Debris Initiative. And now we work across the country with the help of about 1,300 partner organisations that are all contributing their data, as well as volunteers, individuals that might not be connected with organisations. So really has come from a really small concept, but has been able to grow and spread, and the impact now is just amazing. It kind of blows my mind when I look at some of those statistics. So back in 2004, this is what I was doing as a job. I was teaching people how to scuba dive. That's actually a Maori, Malabar cod up on the Barrier Reef. Malabar cods they get really big, as you can see, and the number of dots on their skin indicate how old they are. So she's actually a pretty big and old fish, and I just felt blessed that having the opportunity to interact with wildlife like this while I was under the water. These animals, they're not in cages, they're not trained, they're not on leashes. They choose to interact with you, and they can leave whenever they want. And when you have a moment in time where you look into the eyes of another species, whether it's a fish or a dolphin or a whale or a shark, and you realize that we are all connected on this planet, and what we're doing as humans is impacting wildlife in a way that they can never do anything about. And so that's why I was really passionate about getting involved and trying to be practical in improving things in the long term. And as I said, cleaning up is great. You get immediate improvement in the health of the environment, but if you go back to the next tide, you'll see that there's more washed in. So we need to do more than just cleaning up. So that's where I guess I came from initially. And when we founded Tangaroa Blue, it was with a small group of really like-minded people, and everyone was really connected to the ocean through surfing or fishing or diving. And we actually spoke with some elders in New Zealand about using the name Tangaroa to make sure that it was appropriate culturally. And we got their blessing, and we had a Maori artist design our logo for us as well. So we wanted to show that culture was really important, but our oceans are all connected. So this is a way that we could connect these not only these myths around the god of the ocean, but also around what we can do about it. So I think we might have Edward joining us.
And Brad's here.
Brad. Hi, Brad. Yeah, I saw you.
Hi, sorry, I was late for my own.
That's okay. I hope you're feeling okay.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'll be okay.
Cool.
Yeah, very interesting beginning.
No problems at all. All right, I might just pause sharing, see if I can get rid of this waiting room. Oh, it looks like Edward might be still joining us.
Okay.
No, he's trying to sign in on 3 devices.
It took me about 5 minutes until it actually sort of started, showed the window. It just sort of said it was loading whatever, and it took ages. So
wow, okay. Maybe the internet is being... Oh, it looks like Edward's audio is connecting, so maybe that is working. Are you there, Edward? Technology is great when it actually works. Sometimes it works better than others. All right. Okay, so so that's a little bit about the organization and where we started and how we kind of expanded. So the issue that we wanted to address was marine debris, and back in 2009 the UN Environment Programme put a definition around marine debris, so that's when it really started to be identified as an issue. They defined marine debris as anything that was persistent or manufactured or processed. It's a solid material, and it's been discarded, disposed of, or abandoned into the marine and the coastal environment. And while we thought that was a pretty good definition around where we were starting, we realized that so much of this rubbish had a land source to start with. And so if we didn't look at our estuary environments and our land-based sources as well, we were kind of missing more than half of the story if we just looked at what was in the coastal and the marine environment. So our definition of marine environment or marine debris actually encompasses any kind of water environment, from the stormwater drain all the way through to an offshore island or underwater in the middle of the deep oceans, just to be more holistic in trying to address this issue.
Excuse me, Heidi. So would that include things like creeks and rivers that don't flow into the ocean, but they're sort of local? Like where I live, there's a creek, and it's disgusting. For example. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what we've done with the database is to actually have a way to define the type of location as well. So that if we want to pull out all the coastal sites we can, or all the estuary sites we can, or all the lakes we can, stormwater drains. And it gives us a better catchment idea, rather than just what's washed out, dispersed, and just happened to wash back in again.
Yeah, sure.
And so the stats around how much is up there is all really a bit of a concept still. It's based on, you know, algorithms and formulas and estimates, which means it's not completely accurate, but the estimates are somewhere between 8 and 13 million tonnes that are entering the world's oceans. And when you look at some places, this particular photo is from Brazil, they may not have the best waste management infrastructure or processes. In a lot of places where the river was the place you disposed of with rubbish in previous times, but that rubbish used to be organic. It used to be leaf and bone and shell, and that was all going to compost in its own time. And now we've changed our processes around plastics and packaging, and we're still using the same disposal method, and that's why we see these massive amounts of inputs going into our oceans every year. And then we also have a new kind of issue around climate change and more and more extreme weather events, which have the potential to create new sources of marine debris. We know that up in Cape York, if we start to see cyclones coming around, they can push debris from certain parts of the ocean into trade winds onto our shores, and in normal circumstances we may never have received that load in the past. If we look down to what's happening off Sydney at the moment with all of those shipping containers going over, that's from extreme weather events, and that's a phenomenal amount of debris just dumped into the ocean from one event that everybody's scrambling to clean up at the moment. And then there's another beach just near Newcastle called Stockton Beach, and the erosion that's happening on that particular beach is been going on now for quite a few years, but it's adjacent to where a very old landfill from the 70s is, and they're finding now with each wave this old landfill continues to be exposed, and things that were chucked away in a landfill back in the 70s, which we would never dispose of in a landfill these days, are now being exposed, such as asbestos and chemical drums, as well as other litter. So this extreme weather event will continue to create an additional source of marine debris, as well as what's flowing out through inappropriate waste management infrastructure that's out there already. As far as so what is the problem with all of this stuff going into the ocean? When it first started to become a bit of an issue in the mainstream media and also through science, the issue that they were looking at was the conservation or the impact to our wildlife. And it was very, very clear that animals were either eating it or getting entangled in it. What I like to just point out on this slide is this number here, 800 species affected by marine debris worldwide and 77 Australian species. When I first started presenting about this issue in 2004, this number was 276 species that we knew were affected by marine debris. So in the last 16 years, we now are aware that up to, over 800 species are impacted. So our research and our knowledge of how it's being impacted is getting much better. But we're looking now at even corals on the barrier reef being able to ingest microplastics, and that starts to cause issues because a lot of the plastics have chemicals and toxins in them that either make them hard or soft or rubbery or fire retardant. And when these plastics fragment up into the marine environment, they still hold these toxins as well, and that can cause and to be an endocrine disruptor, which affects fertility. And so then we also have the entanglement risk, where things can get caught. Wildlife can't get to the surface to breathe. or they can't grow effectively if they get caught when they're very young. So we know that that is, the main funding source around this issue is the impact on wildlife. And as such, like a lot of environmental issues, it probably gets the least amount of funding just based on that conservation value. So it's important for us to identify what other impacts it will have that may bring in different funding sources, but also better understanding broadly about the issue. And some of those include vessel and navigation hazards. And again, the shipping containers floating off Sydney are a massive navigation hazard at the moment. We have habitat damage. In some places, the debris loads are so thick that nesting turtles can't even, dig holes to lay their eggs. I mentioned before the ingestion of microplastics by corals on the Great Barrier Reef. And then we start to see economic loss, especially in tourist areas. I'm aware of people that don't necessarily want to go to Bali anymore because they don't want to swim around in an ocean full of plastic bags. So that starts to affect economies as well. And it poses the question around what is the value of a clean beach, or what is the value of a clean marine environment. But the one that's probably the scariest that we really need science to be able to answer is what impact does that have on human health? And if we look at fish eating plastics in the ocean, and then bigger fish eating those fish and so forth, and we know that those toxins can bioaccumulate up the food chain, well, we're at the top of the food chain. So what will happen to us if we continue to consume fish that have consumed plastics and the toxins associated with those? And as I mentioned, the chemicals have been shown to be endocrine disruptors, which can affect fertility. So, we might be looking at 30 or 40 years down the track when human populations start to be impacted because fertility rates drop because of the toxin loads in our body from the fish that we ate because we couldn't deal with our rubbish in the first place, which I think will be kind of an ironic story, but one that's we're still waiting for science to be able to answer. And so by looking at it from these other perspectives, in addition to the conservation aspect, we start to see that this issue is actually much bigger than we originally thought. And some scientists are actually calling it the next climate change because it's such a massive international issue. So what are we trying to do about it through the Australian Marine Debris Initiative? We wanted to set up a holistic framework that enabled us not only to remove what was out there, we know that there's plenty of stuff out there, and if waste management infrastructure around the world doesn't continue to improve, those loads will continue to get bigger. So we start off with our cleanup events, and in some cases there are 100 meters of beach that one person has adopted and committed to cleaning up, on a monthly or a quarterly basis to collect data, which is our monitoring sites. And in some cases we take teams of 20 people up to a remote place in Cape York where we might work with the community up there for a week, and we could remove up to a tonne per kilometre. And that first photo on the left there, that's actually from one of those remote cleanup events where we're pulling off a huge big piece of ghost net that had been dug up into the sand. And so when we do these cleanups, we also set up a sorting station and a data collection station where everything gets separated into categories for the database, and that data collection process happens. And it also enables us an opportunity to separate what we can as far as recyclables, and this is where we might bag certain things that we know artists are keen to get. So we sell bags of rubbish to artists, so they might buy a bag of thongs and a bag of toothbrushes from beach cleanup event to make artwork out of. So we try and divert as much as we can from landfill, and then that data will go into the database, and then we use that to try and track to the source. And then we work with the right stakeholder group to find a solution that would prevent a particular item from ending up in the environment in the first place. Now, once we've implemented those source reduction plans, we need to continue the cleanups and the data collection to enable us to see whether we've fixed the problem or whether it still needs further work and tweaking. So it continues to cycle until we're really sure that we've nailed that issue, and then we can kind of move on to another issue that the data is showing us as a problem. So that's the framework, and we're pretty excited because just a couple of days ago we kicked over 16 million data points in the database. So this is the biggest marine debris database in the Southern Hemisphere and one of the biggest ones in the world. We have almost 20,000 cleanups that have been submitted to the database. And as I mentioned, they're not all Tangaroa Blue cleanups. We work with over 1,300 partner organisations that are all contributing data into the one database. And that enables us to get the biggest bang for our buck because we have a consistent methodology. Over 168,000 volunteering opportunities and over 3,500 cleanup sites around Australia. So it's a pretty impressive network now, and it enables Tangaroa Blue to run our cleanups in places where there isn't any local capacity or is a data gap. But otherwise, we really just rely and work with the partners that are already on the ground that can do that regular cleanup effort and data collection. And I guess when we look at the data, everyone tells us, well, what's the thing? What's making the biggest problem? And for us, it's understanding that the marine debris signature is very, very regionally dependent. And so if we look at these photos, this top photo up here, this is 80 O-bikes that were pulled out of the Yarra River in Melbourne. So this is a very specific issue around the Yarra River, and a system of borrowing a bike that just obviously wasn't working because there was no value associated to the bike. People were throwing them in the river when they were done with it. So a very specific issue around here. This second photo up the top here, this is actually from Christmas Island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And there was so much polystyrene foam on this beach that it actually looked like snow. And when you look at the rest of the debris items on that beach, the majority of them were washing across the ocean from Indonesia. And so that's a very, very different issue to the O-bikes in Melbourne, and would need a completely different strategy to stop it. This photo just below, this is over 20,000 cotton bud sticks that have washed up on one beach near Warrnambool, which is to the west of Melbourne. That particular beach is very close to a waste treatment plant, and we've found that the waste treatment plant filters are actually too wide that cotton bud sticks can slip through them. So we've been working with the community down there and also with the waste treatment plant to try and upgrade their filters to stop this flow of cotton bud sticks. But yeah, over 20,000 that they've collected, I think it was over a 2-year window, which is quite phenomenal and not something that we actually see anywhere else. And this photo is something that is being replicated at the moment. This is the first shipping container incident that was near Newcastle in 2018, where they lost 90 shipping containers, and all of a sudden we had, one particular item, or in here cases two. We had iced tea from Taiwan and emu containers for emu cream, all washing up on one particular beach. So by looking at the data, we understand that there's not just one problem. We need to look at it at a regional context to really then start to figure out, well, what needs to happen in each area that will reduce the items that are spiking in their own data sets. And this is just an example of all the different sources that you can see. So we have stuff coming from stormwater drains, maybe from litter starting off in a street, and this can be kilometres away from our coast. We have the sewage system, wind, beach visitors, runoff from factories and illegal dumping. And then from the sea, we have recreational boats, we have commercial fisheries or cargo ships, and then we have ocean currents. And one of our biggest barriers that we have straight away when we look at it like this is that so many of these sit under different jurisdictions. So some of them sit under local council, some of them are state or federal government legislation, and some of them are international or just industry best practice. And so getting everyone to connect on that is somewhat challenging. And you get a lot of gaps, but you also get a lot of overlap. So what needs to change to stop the release? That's the $64 million question. And in some cases, it can be a change in design. It can be education and awareness. It might be that we need to change the way something is used, or a practice, or even a compliance response to help to get those changes that will stop at the source. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of the latest of what's happening in this space. At an international scale, we were so excited that the Australian government actually referred to Tangaroa Blue and the Australian Marine Debris Initiative in a report that they had to submit on the Sustainable Development Goals. Have you guys heard about the SDGs before?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So there's basically these 17 goals that have been agreed on an international level that all relate around sustainability internationally. And life below water, which is number 14, actually has a marine debris target. So we connect with that really, really strongly. But we also connect with number 17, which is partnerships for the goal. So how can we all work together with that? And we were excited to see that DFAT, so the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trading, used us as a case study on how in Australia we're working towards our obligations under the Sustainable Development Goal Framework. We also work really closely with other partners such as the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, and they're responsible for MARPOL, which is legislation around what you can throw over the side of a vessel. And up until about 2013, you were able to throw certain things off a boat, such as metal and glass and cardboard, and that got upgraded at the end of 2012, and now you're not allowed to throw anything over the side. And so AMSA is in charge of legislating that within Australia waters. And we find a lot of stuff that comes from passing ships and international fisheries. So we're able to feed that data into AMSA, and they're able to feed that into the IMO. And we're excited that part of that framework and that process actually got the IMO to start developing a marine debris action plan at the end of last year. So up until then, they didn't have one. This is a picture of a foreign water bottle, which is called Fuji Trading Singapore. It's actually a ship supply company. So there's no other way that that would have washed up on a beach in Cape York where we found it, unless it came from a vessel, because you can see the label still on it and it's still really new. It hasn't floated from Singapore, for example. And so we were able to track some of these items down and work with AMSA on ships releasing waste when they really shouldn't. This is the shipping container loss that occurred in 2018, and that was just in the Hunter region. So we were able to help identify how far some of these items had washed up. And at a really local level, we're working around Port Phillip Bay in Melbourne with local projects that stop litter items, so cigarette butts or coffee cups, plastic bags or balloons. And so these are all the community groups that we've worked with around Port Phillip Bay to implement 11 little projects. Each one of those projects is done at a very local scale and tackling an item of litter from ending up as litter in the first place. So what we've tried to do is to develop something that was scalable, something that could be used at an international level, but also is really relevant to local communities trying to tackle their own litter problems. And here's some examples of those projects around Port Phillip Bay, where we have the Peninsula's Last Straw, where they've worked with a number of cafes to stop handing out plastic straws and replacing them with paper straws. We had one of our councils created an event guide for sustainable events. We've got cafes that are not handing out single-use coffee cups or coffee cup lids anymore, as well as some fishing projects. So all really local projects that can be done as well. And one that we are very proud of is Operation Clean Sweep. So I don't know if you've ever heard of a nurdle, but nurdles are also known as plastic resin pellets, and they are the feedstock of plastic product. So if you're going to make a plastic product, you need nurdles to make that out of. They're about the size of a grain of rice. They're very small, and they're different types of plastic, and you would buy them in bulk and you would blow mold them into whatever you want to make, whether it's a container or a bag or a box or whatever. And we do find these nurdles on most beaches that we look for them. And unfortunately, we've discovered that there's not all that good a handling. And you can see here, there's two different factories that we've found big loss occurring from inside. And one of these bulker bags, we estimated that there's around 40 million plastic resin pellets just in a 1 cubic meter bag. So one spill like this can, and it rains and all of the stuff just ends up in the stormwater drain, can actually release a massive amount of microplastics into the environment. So we started this program that was originally developed in the US back in 1992, and we were able to bring it to Australia with the help of the Victorian government and also with some of the industry partners. And we've been rolling it out across the plastics industry, both the trucking companies and the manufacturers and the suppliers. And the goal of the program is to prevent pellet loss. So just improving housekeeping and making sure spills are tidied up. Now, what we found, which was really interesting, is when we were working on this project, we were trying to actually report some of the factories that just wouldn't improve their act and we were seeing these massive losses occur time and time again. And we realized that the local councils felt that they were unable to do a compliance response because they considered that an EPA issue. And when we reported to the EPA, they said it was a local laws issue, so nobody was actually doing anything about it. So while we were working really strongly with the industry to try and get them to clean up, we were also working really strongly with the government to try and figure out who was going to actually fine people, or at least do a compliance response for those companies that kept doing the bad thing. And in 2018, the EPA in Victoria put their hand up and said, "Yep, we're gonna start looking at this." And they issued a guidance on handling plastic resin pellets. And since then, they've actually been able to address that at some of those really bad suppliers and manufacturing sites that we've been able to give them evidence and data from for a number of years to show how much that they were spilling. So we've had to tackle it from both ends, both the industry side, but also from a government side. And we held last year in February the first Great Port Phillip Bay Nurdle Hunt. And what was really cool was we actually had 52 people rock up to help us hunt for nurdles along the Yarra River. That's the Westgate Bridge for anyone that knows Melbourne. And out of that, we had 8 different chemical companies bring their staff to come and see whether they could find any nurdles. And they were convinced they weren't going to find any. And they were absolutely shocked to see how many was along the river edge. And they identified them as obviously coming from their own industry. So they're all working really, really proactively now in trying to reduce this and spread the message throughout the industry, which is a lot easier than a not-for-profit trying to get the industry to change. It's whether you can get it done within their own industry. So we're slowly along that track, and we were going to hold our nurdle hunt this year in March, but COVID had other plans. So we hope to be able to hold that towards the end of the year again. And there's our Operation Clean Sweep partners that we've had signed up over the last few months, which is great. And then the last one I wanted to talk about as far as a case study of how we've done work in reduction is a really unique project that we've had with one of our corporate partners, and that's a company called We Refill. And they create or develop these water refill stations that they can take to big events. And this event is actually at Blues Fest last year. You guys might know that as a pretty big music event. And they were able to supply smaller units than this. This was the public unit out the front, smaller units on every single backstage. And they reduced 24,000 single-use water bottles back of stage at Blues Fest. So there was no single-use water bottle back of stage. Each artist and roadie was given a refillable bottle, and there was 15 of these refill stations around the entire Blues Fest site, and everybody could just refill themselves. So that's a massive change for Blues Fest, and they're looking hopefully next year when they're back again to continue to develop ways to reduce single-use plastics even at events. And we had our friend Jack Johnson there come along and help launch the new refill station, which is a 5-sided unit there that you can see, and you can even get sparkling water out of it, which was a big hit for everybody. So it's about trying to find our networks and how we can connect together to really start looking at source reduction projects. No matter what industry it is, there's always some way that we can connect. And this is just a couple of examples of how we've done that. So that was around that project. I just wanted to provide you with one other little bit of information, which was around a project that we have done on the Great Barrier Reef. And we've created this Reef Clean project. We were actually successful in winning a 5-year government tender to provide marine debris services of removal and prevention across the whole of the Great Barrier Reef. And this was one at the end of 2018. And last year was our first full year out in the field. And this was a report that we released about 2 weeks ago on our Reef Clean project. And I just wanted to show you a little bit about what we've done across the Great Barrier Reef on this. So the report's downloadable from our website, from the Tangaroa Blue website, but also from the reefclean.org website. And through the first year of our project, we were able to remove almost 25 tonnes of marine debris. We conducted 49 big community cleanups, and 133 monitoring cleanups in that year. Over 2,000 people got involved, and 51 different partner organisations. And if we looked at all their volunteer hours that they provided for cleaning up and data collection, and we times that by 30, it's almost $330,000 of in-kind value that communities are, participating and putting into this issue. We also did 59 education and awareness activities, such as workshops and presentations, and we had another 2,000 people jump on for that. So that's just along the Great Barrier Reef. And this is a 5-year program, so each year we will be able to continue expanding and promoting. And in October, we're holding the Great Barrier Reef cleanup event, which means that people can nominate a site along the Great Barrier Reef that they would like to clean up, and we'll supply them with cleanup gear, and they can take their friends and family around and contribute the cleanup during that month. Big snapshot of marine debris across the GBR. And it just gives you a little bit of idea there of what the top 10 items were as far as the data collected just from that particular project. But these plastic fragments, which are plastic items that are breaking up into smaller and smaller pieces, are more than 50% of actually what we're finding. So that's the legacy of plastic in our environment, is that you might have a bottle or container that might take you, 1 second to pick up. But if that piece of plastic is left in the environment for a really long time, it will continually fragment into smaller and smaller pieces, and that's that's a lot more difficult and time consuming to pick up. So that's why we need to reduce our use of plastics in the environment. So I just wanted to share that with you. And if you're interested, as I said, that Reef Clean report is available to download from the website, and that's across all of those NRM regions, and we're really excited about continuing that into the future. So there's lots of opportunities for people to volunteer and get involved if they want. This is just a couple of the ways that data is being displayed in that report. So that's a little bit about what we do and why we do it. I also, from talking with Chloe, wanted to let people know how that they can also contribute with that. And we have a massive amount of resources on our website. I'm just trying to find the right website to find. There we go, and I can share that one with you. Did anybody have any questions so far? I haven't been seeing the chat because I'm on a small screen, so I can't have everything on at once. But did anybody have any questions so far?
No, it's really comprehensive.
It's just been really great to hear all the stuff you've done. It's really
it's one of those things where the problem seems quite large, but you can actually do something or contribute to doing something. So
it's about making those bite-sized chunks and not trying to address everything at once, because that's when it becomes massively overwhelming. And it's like if you decided to turn off every single piece of plastic that you buy overnight, it would be really overwhelming and difficult to do. But if you do one thing at a time, it becomes much more manageable, and that's the system. So can you guys see this? This is our website. And across the top here, there's lots of little tabs. And the resources tab here has a copy of our data sheet. It also has a link to some how-to videos and a manual. And also we have a data collection app. So when people want to submit data, they can download the data sheet, and then they can come onto the website and input it, or they can just download an app on either their iPhone or their Android phone, and then they can input the data directly in that way as well. So there's 2 different ways, but it all goes into the one database, and all of these how-to resources let people know how to actually do that. And one of them is, this one here. So this is the how-to video on how to use the AMD app. And I just thought I would just show you that to a couple of the little screens so that you can see exactly how kind of easy it is. There's basically 4 steps or 4 pages to the app. And this is the first one here. Just bring it back. There you go. So this is the menu when you download the app, and you just click on your Start a Cleanup page. And once you've done that, it opens up the first page, which just wants to know about your collection details. So what date is it? What time did you start? How many hours did you clean up? How many people were there? How many bags did you fill? And we use those big white Clean Up Australia bags. It's a standard size bag. So, you know, if you only cleaned up half of that, you just put half a bag. And then there is another one just below that that says what was the weight that you collected. And you can either use some scales or just kind of estimate how many kilos that you've done. So that tells us about the effort and how far that you cleaned up. So we know the amount of rubbish, how that represents as far as density goes into the database. And then you go to the next point, which is about your location. So there's a little next button there, and then next takes you to where you are. And you can just use a mapping function to identify your site. I might just let this run because it might just be a bit easier. Can you guys just let me know if it is lagging at all? And then I'll if it is lagging, then I won't play it.
If multiple people are submitting data from the same cleanup, it's important that each person only includes the above details for which they are involved in, and not the total for the whole group, or this will result in duplicate information being submitted. To get to the next page, click on the Next button. Location. If an existing AMD cleanup site is already set up in the database, to find your site, zoom in as close as you can on the map to your site and long press down in the main area of your cleanup location. This site will be highlighted and the name of the site will appear on the bottom of the screen. If this is a new cleanup site, zoom in as close as you can on the map to your site and long press in the main area of your cleanup location. This will place the location icon on the map, and our database team will create a new site which will then be visible next time you go to submit data for that site. To get to the next page, click on the Next button. Items. This is where you record your items by typing the item you'd like to record in the search field. Categories with that item in it will appear on the list and then select the correct one. If you're unsure, there is an eye icon which will pop up a picture and full list of items that you can check. Please note that all categories and items are listed in our Marine Debris Identification Manual, which can be downloaded under our Resources tab on our website, tangaroablue.org. Prior to using the app, it is recommended that volunteers take a look at this manual. Each item is categorised firstly by what material the item is made of, for example, plastic, rubber, etc. And then what the item is, for example, plastic drink bottle. Every item that you can find has a home in the database. There are no miscellaneous items. Everything has a home category, so becoming familiar with the categories will streamline the data entry process. Once you've found the correct category, you can then record. How many of that item? Any notes? If it was an unusual find, you can take a photo. This is only needed for unusual items. There is a second tab at the top which says Label. This enables you to collect further details on the item you are recording, including using the barcode scanner as well as noting down brand information. If you need to add extra items to a category that you've already imported, you can swipe to reveal a menu to edit the item on the list and edit the entry. For example, change the number of items from 2 to 4. To get to the next page, click on the Next button. Conditions. On this page you can record the occurrence of plastic resin pellets, also known as nurdles. Any injured or dead wildlife, any unusual site conditions, example heavy rain the day before. And if there is anything else you want to make a note of, this can relate to where on the site you cleaned or if you weren't able to count all bags. For example, you might comment, we collected 100 bags that weighed 500 kilos, but we only counted 10 bags that weighed 30 kilos. Once you submit the data, it will be saved in the Upload Data folder. You'll find this in the menu list. To upload the data, you'll need to first create a login, and then you can upload the data to the database. At this stage, you can also swipe to reveal a menu to edit anything before you send the final data set. You can see a record of data sets that you have uploaded by viewing the Uploaded tab. The AMD database can house...
So I'll just stop that one there, guys. Can everyone still hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So there's a lot of resources like how to use the AMD app. And we also have on our YouTube channel some really short, 1 to 2 minute videos on specific items that we're collecting even more details on. And that just enables people to understand that level of detail that can really help us identify the source. So if we wanted to, for example, collect a water bottle, there could be a lot of places that water bottle comes from. And so I'll show you just quickly an example of that. Under the plastic packaging items in the Australian Marine Debris Database, we have a category for plastic drink bottles. And if we pick up a plastic water bottle from the beach, for example, it could have come from a variety of sources. And if we just record it as one plastic bottle, we might not be able to know exactly where it's come from, whether it's a local litter issue, whether it's come through stormwater drains, or actually whether it's come from offshore on ocean currents or a passing cargo ship. So this is one of the items that we ask people to record a little bit more detail, and that includes the barcode. So this particular bottle has a barcode that starts with 930, and that indicates that it's actually an Australian brand. So more likely to have been a littered item found on the beach rather than something that's come from overseas. Whereas this one is actually a Splash brand, and the number there is 955. That comes from Malaysia. So not sold in Australia, and more than likely coming off one of the cargo ships that's passing close to our coast, because it still has its label on it and obviously no algal growth as well. So you can see that by recording a little bit more detail, it gives us a much better idea of whether we're looking at a local litter issue or whether we're looking at an offshore marine debris issue. And the strategies to solve both of those will be very, very different. Cool. So that's just an example of one of the little grabs that we do in unpacking the database. So we tried to create as many resources as we possibly could to enable people to collect data as efficiently and as easily as they can, but also collecting the right type of information that we can help with strategies. And some of those include the container deposit scheme that we have in New South Wales. So we've been part of helping to set that up, but also helping to monitor it, as well as those plastic bag bans that have been happening over the last couple of years across different states in Australia. And so that's how the database is kind of set up and where all the resources are. And as we mentioned, that there's, people that have adopted their own small little section of coastline that they go to and do, once a week or once a month, as well as these big community cleanup events that we do regularly, except now we have COVID, so we're on a little bit of a stand off that. And the front of the website here, you can see that we have a calendar. So as new events are popping up, they will all be there, and we're always looking for people to come along and help. And they're actually running all over Australia. So lots of opportunities normally to get involved with that as well. So that's pretty much where I kind of wanted to get to you guys today and let you know about the program, about the issue and what we're doing about it. Absolutely happy to answer any questions now, or you can always send me an email later on, and hopefully we can find a way to maybe collaborate on some cleanups, some data collections, and other ways that we can engage your guys' audience in this issue as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Heidi, I just had a quick question. So with the resources, do you think, I was wondering 2 questions. How has the current situation sort of changed the nature of the cleanup events? So, like, for example, if our group were to do a cleanup using those resources, would you suggest we go together, or we do it separately in different, or we try and link up to a bigger event, local cleanup?
I think that to start off with, it'd be good if the group kind of got familiar with the resources, maybe looked at one of the resources on how to set up a small group event just yourselves, and that way it'll help you understand the process. If you wanted to jump, we're probably not going to have any major community cleanup events happening in the near future because of COVID and the restrictions associated with those. So when they do happen, definitely jump on board. Is everybody located in Sydney, or are you guys spread out around different areas?
Sydney.
Yeah, Sydney.
Everyone's in Sydney? Cool. So we actually have 3 of our coordinators that are based in Sydney, and we do run community cleanups with those guys. So as soon as there's anything happening down there, we can definitely let you know. Or if you decide we want to do something ourselves to start off with, and you wanted one of our team to come along and just help out, that would be absolutely possible as well.
Awesome. Okay, that's great. Thank you. That'll help us. Thank you so much. This was excellent. Really. Yeah.
No problems. Just keep in contact with us by email, or if you wanted to do another session, once you guys have decided what your next step is and wanted to run it past one of us, no problems at all. And thank you so much for your interest.
Thank you for your time, and such an awesome presentation.
No worries. Chloe, I'll send you the link to the recording once it's buffered and uploaded.
So we can download that, can we? Oh, that's what we can download that. Oh, good, because I videoed something the other day actually, and I had some trouble. I couldn't actually figure out how to but there's like 3 different. There's like a sound, a video, and then a save thing, and I couldn't figure out how to save it. So yeah.
Which one it is? I will check with my guru, Carmen.
Right.
She's the one that's been managing those for us, but we've been recording most of the presentations, so
awesome.
that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Thanks.
No worries. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so
you
much,
too.
guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, you
Bye.
too. Have a safe drive.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye.
Cool. So Chloe, will she end the meeting? In which case we're all going to get
gone.
Oh, wow. Hello.
All right. Bye.
So Chloe's gone. Wait a second.
She's gone.
I'm in trouble. All right. I guess we all say goodbye.
Yeah.
How are you going?
Yeah, not bad. Good.
Good.
Working a lot.
Late for my.
All right. So you've
All right.
taken the videos, have you?
Huh?
You've taken the videos for the cleanup, or you've done the.
Not yet. You mean the ones that we are? No,
Yeah.
because Chloe felt some of it weren't quite clear on what exactly. Like I thought it was clear, but